Welcome to another episode of Full Court Passport. I'm Rick Bucher. That is Bostjan Nachbar, and we are brought to you by the New Air Club, a door-to-door private jet service that will take care of your every need at an unbeatable price. What sets New Air apart is that it does more than arrange your private jet and crew. They will handle ground transportation, hotel, catering requests, security, you name it. And because they bundle their service, you can be sure the trip will cost exponentially less. Look, not everyone can afford private jet travel, but for those who can, make sure that you're getting as much luxury for every dollar as you deserve. Check out their website at newairclub.com to see exactly how luxurious travel can be. All right, that out of the way, Boki, good to see you again. You are coming to us from LA. You're on business, joining the pre-NBA All-Star festivities. Tell us a little bit before we get started, just in terms of why you're there and what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it's I'm attending a sports conference or basketball conference called Sports Business Classroom that is being ran by same people who organized the NBA Summer League, and one of my good friends from the past when I was playing, and he was a front office guy, Bobby Marks. He's part of that staff, so I was happy to come in and be one of the presenters who's gonna talk about European basketball, EuroLeague, the rules, the differences with the NBA, just to kind of educate people here about European basketball. So it's fun to be here. Great weather, by the way.
Yes, well, and I'm in Northern California, and we've had it too, as opposed to the rest of the country. So
Yeah.
count our blessings when it comes to that. All right, let's continue the education about EuroLeague basketball and get into where we are in the season, which is a very interesting time, very pivotal time for teams that are trying to make that closing run, put themselves in a locked-in playoff spot or in the play-in, move around in the standings to best situate themselves. And this is a time of year where there are signings. And so take us a bit, very briefly, sort of how those mechanics work at this time of the year.
Yeah, you're totally on point. I mean, this for me, even as a former player, when I was still playing, February always felt like a make or break time. In the NBA, maybe, but definitely in EuroLeague, just because that's where you separate children from men, to see
Sure, sure.
who's willing to withstand the grind and who's basically falling off, right? It's especially in this competitive and tough season that we have in EuroLeague, and part of how to get over that hurdle is basically to sign a new player or new players, to help you with injuries, to help you with fatigue, to help you with a dense schedule. And these signings usually in EuroLeague are not minor in terms of end of the bench player. They usually teams save some of the money and bringing game changers even.
This is interesting because what I've noticed in the NBA is that there has been a trend actually away from that. The teams have decided that trying to bring in a piece and adjust on the fly to that piece doesn't always work out. Like, the big moves are made during the off season. It used to be at trade deadline. You'd always wonder, like the sort of like EuroLeague, the teams that were really competing, are they going to get that last piece? They've kind of identified where their Achilles heel might be. Let's go get a piece that'll solve that. And now, I think just from experience, like, it's hard to incorporate that a significant piece. You see far less of it, and you certainly saw less of it at this trade deadline for the NBA. Like, Nikola Vucevic going to Boston was probably the only move I can think of that was made by a team that is a title contender, and looked for a significant piece in order to bolster their chances. So why is it different in EuroLeague? Why does it work, and why does it continue?
Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that every signing is going to work out and is going to be a perfect fit, right? I think the teams are just willing to go really, especially those that are kind of seeing the opportunity to win the title, that are now in the title picture, the upper echelon of the teams in the standings. They are going to go after some of those guys who are available in the market, whether they're guys that got bought out in the NBA, whether it's guys that because of trades and things like that in the NBA for them didn't work out, and they seek opportunity to have a bigger role
Right.
and potentially have same or bigger contract. But it's becoming a trend now where some of the top teams are really saving, I would even say maybe some money, but also the right time to bring in this big name in order to help them get over the hump,
Yeah.
and to compete for the title. You don't see many signings, I would say big name signings for the teams that are kind of on the bottom. I'm not saying they would give up, but they're saying, hey, let's not go there because maybe it's not worth it. Whereas the teams, 5, 6 teams in the standings, they're extremely active at this point. But I have to explain that also that the rules are not as simple in terms of signing players. I mean, yes, you can sign a player until February 25th in EuroLeague. I'm talking about a player who didn't play in EuroLeague before,
Okay.
right? That season. So an NBA player, a player that played in Asia, a player that didn't play anywhere, a player that played only in the domestic league somewhere, you can sign him, without problems. For the players that have played on EuroLeague teams already, they have to get deregistered by January 5th, meaning halfway through the season,
Oh, wow.
in order to be eligible to be signed with another team. So if I'm a player, I need to get off the roster with my team A by January 5th in order to be playing for the team B for the rest of the season.
Interesting.
And that's done because the teams don't want, or the league doesn't want that, late in the February, players will just go from teams that didn't not making the playoffs to the
Right.
teams that are making the playoffs and kind of cause this off balance. So it kind of does make sense, right, in that way. But yeah, you do see sometimes players who want to change teams late January or February, and simply the rules don't allow it, so they're stuck with their teams.
Yeah.
That's the main difference, and we don't have trades obviously in EuroLeague, as you know, so it gets complicated to
Yeah.
change teams.
It's not very common for a player in EuroLeague to go from one team to the next within the season.
Not that common. Not that
Yeah.
common. I think we're seeing more of that last couple of years, and by more I mean few players. Used to be almost nobody.
Yeah.
Once you sign with the team, you were with that team the whole season or
Right.
whatever long your contract was. Now we're kind of seeing that, and I think in the future we might see even more of that. You might see teams, players, coaches who just want to change.
Yeah.
And we, from our side, we also want to allow that freedom to players without jeopardizing the fact that guaranteed contracts stay guaranteed. We don't want to see players just losing that, right? So
Right.
it's always players' decision whether they want to leave or not. That's important for us.
Right. Well, and there's one example of that this season that we're going to get to in a second, a change with Bayern Munich. But I want to talk about some of the other players that have been added, and I want to start with Cam Payne with Partizan, even
Mhm.
though they've got a lot of ground to make up
Yeah.
to possibly be in the picture. But it's been interesting for me because Cam Payne has come in and he's had a positive effect, and he's one of those players where there's certain NBA players that I would look at and say no problem. I know that guy can play EuroLeague as well as NBA. Cam Payne, I just wasn't sure, but I do think that his makeup, his personality, like the partisan atmosphere, I can see him embracing that, and I can see partisan fans embracing him because he plays with such passion. Now, that can go both ways, right? Like sometimes it can be a little too much, or a guy can try to do too much, but it seems to be working for Cam Payne and Partizan.
I mean, they've been playing much better recently. They won a couple of games. One at home just this week, big against Panathinaikos. I think that was a huge confidence boost. But that team struggled early. Like, remember, we talked about it, right? The legendary coach Jelko Bradovic left the team, stepped down. New coach Penaroya, Spanish coach, came in. They needed time to basically gel again as a team, and and yeah, I mean, one of the players that actually went through that of changing teams was Tariq Jones. Like he left Partizan, went to Olympiacos. So that's a case of a player that made that transition prior to January 5th. But
Mm-hmm.
they've added Cam Payne, right, at the point guard spot, and he's really embraced his role as a leader, as one of the guys that is the face of the team currently, and is pushing that team to play better. Yeah, I agree. I was also positively surprised on how well he adjusted to the EuroLeague game.
What do you make of the Jabari Parker situation there? It's been very up and down, but it has not turned out the way that they had hoped.
Not until this point. I'm not sure how what the plans are with the team to continue to have him play and get him into the game rhythm. I mean, he can help them so much. The quality is there. He's shown it last season with Barcelona, and the season before. It just hasn't worked out so far, and it's very difficult to say because they are in a situation where they need him to step up. He's a big part of that team, not just his name and quality, financially as well. So they need him to do those things. I don't know if there's any personal background that is affecting his play, but they're gonna need him, and the season's not over. And like I said before, now is the crunch time, and players who maybe haven't played great until now, if you have some of the games now that are kind of the last train to make it to that top 10 to get in the play, and right to win those games now, it kind of almost means double. I mean, you're a hero if you're winning in this situation now, where it's so difficult to get together 2, 3, 4 wins in a row. And I really hope that Jabari can get a chance to do that.
Yeah. Some of the other names, Kenneth Faried is another one that's a pickup. When you look at, and I'll let you go wherever you want to here, like who do you think has been either the shrewdest pickup or the one that you look at it and go, man, that's working out perfectly?
I mean, Kenneth Faried came in and he just, first couple of weeks that he was in Panathinaikos, he just dominated. It seems like the guy was as fresh as you can be when you come in, just came in and just.
I think he kind of was, because I don't know where he was playing. He had some time off.
So he definitely had a huge effect on the team early on, right? Kind of fell off lately, but adds another important piece to their already strong roster. So he's one of the guys that I think can still do a lot of good things. I mean, it's Olympiacos added Monte Morris and Corey Joseph. They're still expecting bigger things from both. I saw that Corey Joseph recently, just today, was announced that he got injured. I'm not sure how bad the injury is. Maybe Cameron Payne, like we mentioned, is one of those guys that has probably the biggest effect on the team as a midseason signing. But I'm intrigued by what's going to happen with Nigel Hayes-Davis, who just recently got let go by Milwaukee, I believe, and is now actively seeking the return to EuroLeague. I mean, that's a guy that played in Žalgiris, played in Barcelona, did well, went to Fenerbahce a couple of years ago, and has had an amazing run with Fenerbahce team, winning EuroLeague title and becoming the Final Four MVP, and then chose to explore the NBA path, which didn't work out for him.
Yeah.
And now he's on the way back. So there's teams competing for him. There's 3 teams that are kind of in the media mentioned, Panathinaikos being one of them, even though I hear that he let's say denied that option. Fenerbahce, he could return there. I think that would be probably the best fit, just because he knows the coach, he knows the system. And Hapoel Tel Aviv, which is a very hungry team, let's say that, right? The newcomer in EuroLeague wants to do big things, openly talks about making it to the Final Four. They have a huge roster, but they've been struggling lately, and he would be a huge boost for them. So that's what it comes down to with these midseason signings. Like, you're trying to get guys that are rotation players immediately, that can give you a boost. Injuries are a huge part. I mean, we've seen a lot of injuries this year, and that's a topic that is already being addressed by the Player Association with the league on how to lower those injuries in the future, including the scheduling that we have. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of those midseason signings become the X factor for that team. We said before, coming in fresh and having half a season in your legs instead of the full season, it's a huge difference.
Yeah. One guy we didn't mention who has had a tremendous amount of success overseas, Gershon Yabusele, who I'm trying to think if I know he just got dealt, I'm trying to think if he's
Chicago.
available
He's in
right now.
Chicago. He's in Chicago. So he stayed on the roster in Chicago.
Yeah,
I'm not. I don't think the return to EuroLeague is imminent. He had a great run with Real Madrid.
yep,
I'm sure they would. Well, I shouldn't say I'm sure because I don't know exactly. I don't go into the front offices of teams, but I will say that I would expect that they would love to have him back.
yep.
Another guy who would kind of return back home, so to say, and fit in nicely. So we're gonna have to keep an eye on him, maybe for next season. Even though I think it's a player option for next year for him, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And Dante Exum, right? He just got released yesterday, I believe, from Washington.
Yep.
So I'm not sure about his health status, whether he's capable to play. I know he had injuries
Yep. He hadn't
lately.
been playing.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if it's on the table for him to play this season. I would not be surprised if he would be going back to EuroLeague, just because he also had a great run already, and he fits. I mean, he's a guy that is beloved by the fans, plays aggressively, big guard, can do so many different things, and I'm sure that teams will go after him immediately if he becomes available.
He actually was effective in the NBA this last time around. His first turn after being drafted, he was labeled as somewhat of a disappointment. I think going overseas actually helped
Yeah,
him,
yeah,
allowed him to evolve, and he came back and he was a different player for the Dallas Mavericks. I think there it's just a matter of where that team is
mm,
and making the deal with Washington to make all the numbers fit is the reason that he was in that mix. But I know Jason Kidd, and from point guard to point guard, you don't play for him if you can't play the position.
yeah.
And he gave them some valuable minutes. I just think where they are in terms of rebuilding around Cooper Flag, he got caught up in the wash when it comes to that. And Yabusele, by the way, had a great debut for the Chicago Bulls. And considering how they're looking to change their culture, I would expect that he's going to stay there.
Mhm.
I wanted to bring him up just because I know what a factor he was in EuroLeague last year.
I mean, super talented player and physically extremely strong. He can do a lot of good things for them. So hopefully he can stay there. I know it's his big dream to play in the NBA, to actually play, not just to be in the NBA. So
Yeah.
let's see if the Bulls are the place to do that.
Yeah. All right. We should be joining or being joined by our guest here any second, David Kahn. I'll go ahead and do the introduction and trust that he's good. There he is. There is the man, David Kahn, kind enough to join us here. Special guest, president of Paris basketball, former president of basketball operations for the Minnesota Timberwolves, winner of both the EuroLeague championship and France's LNB Elite Leaders Cup. David, thank you so much for taking the time. I have to ask you because I have not seen you since you have become an expat and are now.
Ooh, just
There
went
we
dark
go.
here. Hold on just a
I
moment.
know.
Live
Just
TV.
we
Hold on, gotta get
we
the
don't
lights
need the
back
witness
on.
protection program. We're good. In any case, you may not know this, Boki. Former
Tell me.
sports writer David Kahn
Okay, I didn't know that.
worked in my profession at one time, and then got smart and said, "You know what? Let me matriculate to the other side of this equation," and has been tremendously successful. And I can't wait to hear what it was like for him in terms of making that transition. Because you might know this better than me, Boki. I don't know that anybody has ever made the shift from NBA to EuroLeague as an executive running an organization. Am I missing somebody?
Well, Maurizio Gherardini went from Benetton to Toronto front
Yes.
office, I think Charlotte front office, and then Fenerbahce. So
Right, but he
but
was
yeah, exactly.
there,
Yeah, no,
over and back.
yeah,
David stands as the first and only to be an American executive for an NBA team and then go over and have success in EuroLeague, elevating Paris basketball to places they had not been previously, if I'm not mistaken. So, David, first I just have to ask, what is life for you like living in Paris compared to, say, Portland, Oregon, Indianapolis, Indiana, or Minneapolis, Minnesota?
Well, I'm a Europhile to begin with, so I always appreciated Europe and always favored Europe over the States.
Hmm.
And I don't think I'm saying something that should be interpreted as political, but life in America has not gotten better since I left. And I'm very happy to be living here. I still get back to New York a few days a month. I'm still teaching a class at NYU,
Oh, wow.
but I don't get to campus more than a few days a month any longer. So the rest of it's done by Zoom.
Hmm.
I'll be in LA this weekend for obvious reasons, and I'll head up to Portland to see family. But my life is here now,
Yeah.
and has been. It wasn't that I elevated Paris basketball anywhere. Along with my partner Eric Schwartz, we founded Paris basketball. There was no Paris basketball. So this
Hmm.
club is only 7.5 years old.
Hmm.
And we've had an enormous amount of success the last few years in particular. In fact, the last couple nights up in Portland, our last two head coaches went head to head, Tuomo Salo and Tiago Splitter.
Yep.
And I'm not sure. I'd venture to say that's never occurred before in European basketball, where
For
a
sure.
team has sent over two NBA has helped create two NBA head coaches.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm very happy to be here. I'm sorry about the lighting. I'm doing this at our office, and it's Sunday night here, so it's 8 o'clock, and I think there's a automatic shutdown, which is
Yep.
what happened.
Okay. All right.
Europeans are very efficient when it comes to
Yes, it is.
when it comes to energy conservation.
It's better in that way too.
Yeah. Thanks also from my side, David, for taking the time. I mean, it's a huge pleasure to talk to you. And I at first I wanted to ask you, you touched on it a little bit, but what's the biggest difference between being the president of an NBA team versus the EuroLeague team? I'm sure the differences are big, and I probably could talk it for hours about it. But in a nutshell, what would be the biggest difference when it comes to this comparison?
Well, I spent 9 years with the Indiana Pacers from 1995 to 2004. And while there, I was in effect the number two person to Donnie Walsh for most of my time there. And as a result, Donnie was sort of the last of a dying breed of executives who had oversight over business, basketball, and the arena. Nowadays in the NBA, everything is so siloed that it's very rare. I don't know if anybody has that kind of oversight, but when I was with Indiana, we did. And I really enjoyed doing more than just basketball. I was given the opportunity to lead the charge and then the design development for the club for the building that we built, Conseco Fieldhouse, now Gamebridge Fieldhouse. Oversaw the marketing plan for the new arena opening and the sales effort, in addition to all the work I did with Donnie on the basketball side. So by the time I got to the Timberwolves, and in between, I had a company that owned and operated 4 G League teams, which back then was the D League. And by the time I got back to Minnesota, I was in a siloed position. I was president of basketball and didn't really have any oversight over arena or business. So it's more about this opportunity to found the club here and start the club here and literally build the club from nothing has allowed me to go back to the way I like to do things in Indiana, where I had, oversight over everything.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that the two former Paris head coaches are now coaching in the NBA. To what do you credit that?
Well, first of all, we hired a very talented coach named Tuomo Salo a few years ago. He had had a lot of success in both the German league and in the BCL championship, and he was ready for the next phase in his career when he joined us. We won 25 straight games that year. Really kind of unheard of. We won the Euro Cup. We won the Leaders Cup, which is the mid-season tournament. Didn't win the French league that year. But we won a lot, and I think that he became so successful that he got on the radar of several NBA teams, and Memphis was the first one to identify him as somebody who I think, I felt very strongly at the time that they had a coach, but I thought that Thomas was going to ultimately be their next head coach whenever they made a change, and sure enough, he became that. Thiago Splitter. I was telling one NBA team last summer that had an opening before he got hired as an assistant at Portland that the guy just can do this. I mean, you just kind of know sometimes. And I was so impressed last year. He has the presence and he has the leadership and the charisma capabilities. And I really respected him because he put his ego aside. We had to run the same system. In fact, we're going to run the same system every year. We play fast, we play relentless defensively, we try to trap and press the entire game, which is how I think it should be played. And he continued that, and we're doing that again this year. So I think in both cases, in both cases of Tuomas and Thiago. Tuomas, we were fortunate that he wanted to come here. Thiago, we were fortunate that he wanted to be a head coach. And this was the first time that he ever was able to be a head coach. And he proved to be very good at it.
You touched a little bit on that up-tempo style that Paris basketball is known for. And I'm just wondering whether there was something that Thomas Isalo brought in, or was there something that you envisioned as the style of play for Paris basketball, or how did that happen? Because it's such an outlier if you compare it to other EuroLeague teams that like to play slower pace, slow it down. And whenever you watch Paris basketball, hey, this is going to be a fun game to watch regardless. How did you get to that? How did you get to that?
I appreciate you saying that. That's very kind. I've always adored basketball when it's played fast and open style. Growing up, I thought the LA Lakers, the Showtime Lakers, were just a beautiful thing to watch. And I don't know if people remember this. People usually see the Lakers through the prism of the Celtics series, but when the Lakers were playing other teams that weren't as prepared as the Celtics, the Lakers used to take the ball out of bounds after a made basket and throw it to midcourt in one pass, and then there'd be one more pass and it'd be a layup. I just thought it was beautiful to watch, breathtaking. And the Lakers were much better defensively than they were ever given credit for because they were so good offensively. I've always believed that basketball should be played that way, and I think the players want to play it that way. So we were having I guess I can say it now, a secret meeting with Thomas in Bonn, Germany. And my young GM at the time, who has moved on to a job in Australia, he put in a podcast that Thomas had given, a very obscure podcast, basketball podcast. And everything that came out of his mouth, I agreed with. He wanted to play fast. He wanted to be, play hard the entire game. He also wanted to, relentless defensive intensity, full court. I said, this guy is saying everything that I believe in. Basketball is a game of numbers. You just try to get an advantage, 4-on-3, 3-on-2, 2-on-1, which is what fast break basketball is all about. So I think that I always wanted to do this, and I think in Thomas taking the job, it was a kindred spirit in that, we were totally aligned on the way that the game should be played. The one thing that we do that everybody gets always really crazy about, not in a bad way, but we sub a lot.
Yes.
But the reason we sub a lot is because the players are told that if they don't sprint on every play, then they shouldn't be playing. And sometimes I see some of our guys who, after 3 minutes, are just gassed. They come onto the court and they can, they're like bent over. That's what we demand. That's the only way that we've played the last 2.5 years. I remember talking to Ryan Boatwright. He was our point guard about 5 years ago. And I said to him, because Ryan was a good player, but by the third or fourth minute, he'd be walking the ball up as the point guard. And we'd be late getting into our offense as a result thereof. And I just felt like Ryan, I said to him back then, and this is well before he solo, how would you feel about playing, maybe 3 to 4 minute stints instead of 6 to 8? Oh, I don't know if I can do that, David. I need to get my rhythm. I need to, get a couple shots up. That's how most players do react. So no discredit to Ryan. He reacted like almost any player would.
Mhm.
But it just makes so much intuitive sense
Hmm.
that if you want people to play extraordinarily hard, you have to sub more often. Hockey does it.
Yep.
Hockey,
Yeah.
hockey's always done it. And for some reason, I think basketball's fallen into the trap of not doing it. It's maybe the NBA too. They have these long timeouts and so much breaks in the action that maybe in the NBA, a little bit longer stint makes sense. But I don't want to, spend tonight delving into how unwatchable NBA regular season games are, but a lot of them are unwatchable because you don't see the players playing as hard as they do in Europe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
No.
and if I can kind of follow up with this, you had a leader last year in TJ Shorts, and this year Nadir Heath, he kind of took that role. Do you envision, like, for upcoming years, are there profile of players in Europe that you believe coming into Paris basketball they will know right away that might be my role, 3 4 minutes, is going to be demanded of me to play up tempo? Is that something that when you go out to players, that's how you explain it day one, and they either take it or leave it?
Absolutely. We tell them up front
Hmm.
because there's a lot of players that don't understand how to play that hard,
Hmm.
especially the guys from the NBA. I call it being NBA-ified.
Hmm.
Um, the NBA is not a place any longer where guys practice. They just don't. A lot of times there's an early bus and they take the young guys over and then maybe they'll play 3-on-3 if they're not going to play much that night.
Hmm.
But the concept of a practice is really not done any longer at the NBA level. And so last week, for example, we have a very demanding schedule. So it's not like we practice insane. Most of our practices are no more than 50 minutes, but they're very choreographed and they're intended to increase the competitiveness of the players. Isalo said to me once, the idea of the practices that we have here are to make the games feel easier than the practices so that they've gone through the worst part of the week at practice in terms of intensity. And I believe that. I believe we can do that. So we are very upfront and we draw from a very thin pool. We know certain players are not going to fit. They're not going to want to sprint every play. They're not going to want to play that hard. And they have to be willing to do so. But even after we've identified them, we're very, very upfront about what to expect.
Your appreciation for EuroLeague and European basketball is very clear, and somewhat of a cynical feel about the NBA at this point. Did you always have a greater appreciation for EuroLeague and European basketball, or is this something, your current viewpoint, if I'm capturing it accurately, is it something that has evolved, or it was something that you kind of felt all along and invited the opportunity to be able to make the switch?
I fell in love with European basketball in 1987. I was on a trip. Rick probably mentioned while the lights were out that I used to be a journalist. And by being a journalist covering the NBA, and I would cover literally the playoffs from game one of the first round to the finals. So I'd be on the road for, 55 straight days. And as a result, newspapers back then were very clever. They didn't pay overtime. They gave you what was called comp time. And I'd take these long vacations in August and September to
Yep.
Europe before the NBA season started. I would, back then there was no internet. Maybe there was a nascent internet, but there was certainly no computers or phones. And The only way you could get information is you had to pick up the newspaper. And in Italy, they have what's called the Gazzetta dello Sport. It's a
I know that.
pink,
Yeah,
it's a
it's a
pink,
pink newspaper.
It's like a
and
tabloid,
it's
right?
no, it's
It's
a
not.
real newspaper. It's a
Yeah, no, no,
sports
no. I know, but I
newspaper.
mean, is the format regular newspaper fold?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah, I
I'm
think
thinking
you
of
but
a
it's
might
different
be
pink.
one then.
you
It's
might
pink.
be
The paper is
mistaken
pink.
it. Yeah, you might be mistaken a little bit with L'Équipe. L'Équipe here in Paris is a
Yeah,
tabloid format.
yeah.
And so I don't speak Italian, but I know how to read a box score standings, and I see that Bob McAdoo has just been signed by Tracer Milano. I'm in Italy. I rearranged my trip. I went and saw Bob McAdoo's first game in Milan, and it was epic. I fell in love with European basketball that very day.
Hmm.
Mike D'Antoni was the point guard on that team.
Mhm.
Dan
Wow.
Peterson, Dan
Yeah.
Peterson is a very famous coach over here in America and was the coach. And in subsequent summers, when I took time off, I would arrange to see things in Europe. One year I went to the European Championships in Rotterdam. And back then is when, you know, Yugoslavia was still playing together. So Divac and Petrovic, Kukoc, those guys were all playing together on
Hmm.
one team. Um, the Russians were Sabonis and Kurtinitis, Marcelona. It was just great basketball. And I got hired. I went to law school starting in 1990 to try to make myself legitimate and get a job in the NBA. And I was working at NBC Sports, moonlighting at the time, and I worked the '92 Barcelona Olympics. So there were four people that sat courtside for every Dream Team game: Marv Albert, Mike Fratello, his Marv's son Kenny, now a great broadcaster in his own right, who was our statistician, and I was brought in to be the European expert because of my background in both journalism and following European basketball. I was in law school at the time. I was after my second year at NYU Law. So yeah, I've always had a passion for European basketball. There's something very rustic, romantic. You feel there's just something more earthy and more real than the NBA. Now, again, I'm not here tonight to do any kind of bashing, but my affection for the European game and the NBA game, the gap has considerably widened. I went to a Knicks game the other night. I try to get to a couple of NBA games every year. And the Knicks game, the Knicks played Portland. The Knicks played really pretty good defense that night. I was impressed. But the games are just not as enjoyable as the European games because the intensity level just isn't the same.
Hmm.
And the game's too long in the NBA. I didn't feel that 10, 15 years ago, but I feel it now because I've been watching 40-minute games instead of 48-minute games. And I really appreciate the 40-minute game and the way it flows.
Hmm.
So that's I hope that's I know it's a long-winded way of answering your question, but I hope that
Yeah.
answered it.
No, that's
I have one.
very interesting.
I got to ask regarding the flow of the game. Just maybe your view on how yearly games are also becoming a little bit, or not a little bit, but longer in recent years, mostly because of the live replays that the referees do during games. Just your take on it. Is it too much? Is it killing a little bit of that flow, especially in the last minutes of the game? Would you like to see it being sped up? Just wondering from your perspective.
Yeah, I over the years, we've been in the EuroLeague just 2 years. We were in Euro Cup 3 years ago, so same system. But the EuroLeague does take it to an extreme, and I totally agree with you, Bostjan. I think that it's hurting it's some fourth quarters now.
Yeah.
There's certain referees who want to look at everything, and it's not good. And the fans don't, in a lot of these arenas, that's where you do appreciate the NBA style of entertainment when there's nothing going on. But in a lot of these arenas, they don't do anything still.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with your synopsis. I feel very strongly that it can be overused at times and it's hurting.
Yeah, we heard from players on many occasions that is, especially down the stretch, that is killing the flow. they're feeling it. They're just made two shots, and then the game stops for 3, 4, 5 minutes to review something that is at the end not even a game changer. That's something that I think can be improved. But I agree that the flow is much better than an NBA game, and if that can be eliminated or reduced, I think the flow is going to be even better. Rick?
Yeah.
So before we let you go, I have to ask, especially now. I was going to ask anyway, but NBA is looking to build a league in Europe. What are your thoughts and perspective on that happening? I'm going to leave it as wide open as I possibly can. You can take it where you want.
So I don't think anybody knows yet what's going to happen. There's a lot of moves still to be made on both the NBA side. It's clear that they have a stated interest in doing something over here, and I think it's great. Certainly, we could use the NBA's expertise and skill and talent, in particular in generating revenue and media rights, which we're just way, way behind here in Europe. Now, in fairness to Europe, there's a lot of complexity over here that doesn't exist in America. So it's not as easy just snapping your fingers. But I would love the NBA to figure out a way in, and I would love the NBA to figure out a way to incorporate the EuroLeague as part of their plan. It would still give them room to add new cities, especially those in London and Manchester, other places they may want to go. But I don't expect, by the way, that this will end up as two leagues competing head to head. I think that would be really destructive. And I think everybody kind of knows that. But like I said right at the top, I think there's still so much to come over the next weeks, months, maybe a year before we kind of know what this looks like.
Yeah.
And that's what we're all waiting to see. I will say this, the idea of a new league in any form, NBA or NBA starting in the fall of 27, it's not going to happen. It's just there's nothing happening yet. And so whatever we want to think, we have to prepare for at least 2 more years of something that feels EuroLeague, unless, of course, as I said, there's a deal done between the NBA and the EuroLeague, and I don't have any knowledge of that. In other words, we monitor everything. There's a brand new CEO right now of the EuroLeague who used to be an NBA executive. And people are saying, well, that could bode well, and it could. But this is going to be an interesting time over here. It already has been for the last several months, watching the moves, and there will be more, action to follow, I think, over the next, as I said, weeks and months.
So I see you wearing sort of two hats here in terms of, I think, your business expertise and your business perspective, and then your passion for the way the game is played in EuroLeague. Do you see a path in which taking advantage of the NBA's business acumen is compatible with the way that EuroLeague plays, and that you wouldn't negatively affect the spirit of EuroLeague, if you will?
So it's a really good question, because in Europe, within Europe, there's so many different cultures. The Serbians have a certain way of putting on a game, and it doesn't include much timeout animation.
Or none.
The Greeks are not. Or if you go to Barcelona, they're finally in Barcelona starting to do a little bit. But last year we went to Barcelona, we won. And literally every single timeout, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. You could hear the supporter sections cheering sometimes, but otherwise it was basically silence. Kind of like the way the NBA was, back in the 70s and 80s. It will be important for the NBA to learn this, because I don't think they can come in with just some overarching template and say, okay, we're all going to do things the same way. If you were to come to a Paris basketball game, by the way, parts of it would feel a little NBA-ish, but parts of it would feel like Parisian street culture, and parts of it would feel European, because we've got a pretty good supporter section now that is chanting like the Greeks and like the Serbs. and is making noise that way too with drums.
Hmm.
And so I love it because I can truly say it's a one of a kind because of the melding of NBA, Parisian street culture, European basketball. We've got sort of our own thing going. So I do think the NBA needs to make certain that as they venture in, if they venture in, that they are mindful of the cultural differences and are respectful of that, because it will be too much of too shocking to some of these fan bases. The NBA now comes to Europe every year, and the games that they bring are unwatchable. I heard this year, for example, that the game in Germany was okay because
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Wagners were there.
yeah. I've been
And
there.
that
It was actually a solid game, and I've been to many. That one stood out definitely, but of course, because of the background of the Wagner brothers and the Silva and the German influence on Orlando Magic. But yeah, please go ahead.
did you go to London this
I
year?
I did not, but I hear it was much different. Yeah.
I heard it was bad, and we've had some bad ones here in
Boki,
Paris. Now the
Boki's very
ones,
politically conservative when in
yeah, well,
discussing the good and the bad.
the we had Wembanyama here a couple years ago. That was okay, but we get people coming to us, when they come to our next home game, and let's say they went to the NBA game here, and then came to a Paris basketball game. And invariably, they tell us how much better the experience was at our game. And so it's going to be important. Again, we need the NBA, especially in that isolated issue of media rights revenue generation. That's where we really need help here in Europe.
Hmm.
But it will be important for them to recognize culturally, not every country is the same. It's not like when you go to a game at Dallas, it feels like a game in Chicago, it feels like a game in Portland. It kind of does, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you
Mm-hmm.
go from NBA arena to NBA arena, there's kind of an NBA template,
Yep.
but not in Europe. And that's one of the things I love about Europe
Sure.
is that changes in um, until you've seen a game either in Belgrade or in Panathinaikos in particular, you just you haven't really seen anything that like that.
Yeah.
Um, Rick, when the players come out, the home team players come out for warm-ups, there's already like 4,000 people in the stands in the supporter section, and they get they get a standing ovation, when they just walk out for warm-ups. There's just a connection.
Yeah.
Again, there's a rustic, romantic kind of, you're still at the early stage, and I love that. I love building things, and I love being at the front of something.
And it's natural, right? The connection you're talking about, it's natural, it's historic, it's the love that fans have for the club first, and then for everything else second. And no matter who puts on that jersey, the club is going to support him fully. I'm talking about players, of course, when they're changing teams and they come to, for example, to Panathinaikos. I mean, the way they're accepted is probably nowhere else in the world than in some of those teams that you mentioned in EuroLeague. The reception they get and the love that they get from the fans.
Yeah, and I think in this case, it's not that dissimilar probably from European football, meaning that, a lot of those cultural, touch points
Mm.
are probably pretty much the same when it comes to football, and football is the dominant player here.
Yep.
But the basketball, there's certain countries, most of them in Eastern Europe and Southern Europe, that really do have strong basketball followings. Paris is terrific. When I first arrived here, I would walk the city and you'd stop at a playground and it seemed like, half the players were wearing NBA jerseys. And that showed me that there was a real basketball culture here. They
Hmm.
love the NBA here, and that's great. We want them to love the NBA here. Basketball's basketball. We have every year, we now tip off the NCAA women's season. We do
Yeah,
a doubleheader on
yeah, I
The
know.
first Monday of November is a doubleheader on ESPN here.
Hmm.
And so
You may be seeing
basket
Cameron Nachbar in that game
At
in
some
the, in,
point soon.
who?
in the future.
Oh, really? Where's she playing?
She's playing at the Western Reserve Academy, still a high school in Cleveland, up in Ohio.
But everybody in the
what year-
country is offering her.
What year is she?
She's 28. So 28, she's gonna go to college in 2 years, basically 3 years. We'll see.
Is she being recruited already?
Yes,
Heavily.
So she's good.
she's good. She's
Well-
good, but she loves to play. That's what always my reply is always she loves to play. That's what it's all about, and it's whatever follows that love, it's gonna be just great.
David, thank you so much for taking part of your Sunday evening and spending it with us. It's been a true pleasure to be able to reconnect with you, and thank you so much for all of the insight. It sounds like you are in your sweet spot, and I'm more than happy to hear that. Again, thank you for taking the time, and wish you the best of luck going forward with Paris basketball.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
Good talking
Thank
to you.
you.
Bye-bye.
All right.
All right, man, that was tremendous.
I felt like that was a lecture in university. You just sit down and listen. I mean, man with tons of experience and knowledge. Incredible.
And such great perspective from both sides of a lot of what we talk about here. First executive, I think EuroLeague executive we've had on the show, and and probably the most informative we could possibly have because of his background and everything else. So before we go, I just want to get your reaction to what he told us about the NBA Europe situation and how he could see it possibly working. I do think that that's the ideal, right?
I mean, I was shaking my head a lot when he was talking, if you notice, just because I agree with basically everything he was saying. I think he has an amazing perspective, obviously, with the position he's in and experience he has on how this should ideally develop, right? On one hand, he's very clear on European basketball does need NBA's knowledge, expertise on marketing, on generating revenues, on the TV side of things, on how to try to put everybody on the same page, which has been very, as I mentioned before, extremely fragmented in Europe. But on the other, the importance of preserving the culture, the history of European basketball, of European clubs, right? So I think he's uniquely equipped. I hope he can have a voice in these changing times, because I think he's one of the guys that sees things from a really good perspective.
Yep. And I would think that his connections and his relationships in both places
Right.
would also help him to navigate everything.
No, for sure.
So
Sure.
I know that Boki, you have business to take care of while you are in the States, and I'm going to let you go ahead and take care of that, and we'll meet up again, same time, same place next week.
Take care.